Hi, everyone. My name's Tory. As Chanel mentioned, I lead up product for all things mapping at Niantic. My two biggest passions in life are maps / cartography and games. And this really is my dream job, working on building a platform that allows folks that are building games and other AR experiences to create things that are truly persistent in the real world. So what is VPS? I think most folks here have a passing familiarity with it. But the most important word to think about when you think about VPS is really this notion of persistence. This all comes from our company mission. At Niantic, our mission is to inspire people to explore the world together. And if you've played any of our games like Pokemon Go or Pikmin Bloom or Ingress, you notice that a lot of the most important locations in the game that are critical to the gameplay are locations in the real world, and you've probably spent a lot of time interacting with other players in the real world. The reason that VPS is really important for that is if you want to bring those experiences to life, it gives you a way to, as our CEO says, tie atoms to bits. So actually be able to create a model of the world where you can decorate the world and create immersive experiences that are tied to those locations. It means if you put something down that the next day, you or anyone else that you want to share it with can pick that experience up. So today I'm going to be talking specifically about why the web is a great platform for doing this. So we first launched VPS publicly almost exactly a year ago. Which was shortly after we acquired Eighth Wall. And the VPS plus Eighth Wall experience is like really a match made in heaven because it makes it so fast to build these experiences. So when we first introduced this concept, we called it snackable AR. And for those of you that have developed on Unity before, Unity is really what you want to use when you are building a game or like an experience where you have folks that are having sessions of playing for many hours. But that's often at odds with what a lot of our web developers want to do, which is create viral experiences that you can get hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people to see and engage in. And the reason VPS for web is so exciting is because you can literally just send a QR code or a web link through any means. Like you can just tweet like, hey, check out this experience and send a link. And then anyone that goes to that location can immediately see it without having to download an app and create a login and all this other stuff. So it's really about having a streamlined experience that allows you to quickly share, to quickly like discover, create, share, and then iterate on these experiences. So the no app piece here is really critical. My areas of focus are for both Unity developers and web developers. But what we've seen in the first year since we've launched VPS is the iteration cycle for the web is just blindingly fast. So we're really excited to be able to bring a lot of our features to the web super quickly, and pretty much everything we build today, we're building for parity for Unity and web. So what I want to spend the next few minutes doing is sort of walking through the process that any developer is going to want to go on if you want to build an experience in the real world. So with VPS, today we have close to 200,000 locations that are already set up for you to be able to browse and place your content and create your experience. The easiest way to do that is to start with the geospatial browser. We also have a web app, we also have an app that you can download that allows you to go through this whole workflow in your phone. But what I would recommend is the easiest way to get started is to use the geospatial browser, which is over here on the left. So this allows you to browse the entire planet for locations that are already activated on VPS. And you can actually go in and look at these different locations and see the information that's there, some demographic information, and start to figure out where do I want to build my experience. Most of the locations today that are activated on VPS are what we call wayspots. So wayspots are interesting locations around the world that are conducive to our mission. So again, our mission is shared exploration. So there are locations that are good for exploration, good for sharing, good for exercise, good for community. It's not going to be just like a list of gas stations or Starbucks or restaurants. It's locations that really have importance within their communities. One of the reasons why this list of locations is really valuable is because it comes from our player community. So we have tens of millions of monthly active players that play our games. And over the past decade, we have had submissions from these players, whether it's in Ingress, Pokemon Go. We also have this vibrant Wayfarer community, which is why we call these way spots. So they're really focal points for creating interesting experiences. And these are the first locations in the world where we are enabling VPS as a technology for our developers to take advantage of. One other note about way spots. If you've worked with our sample projects in the past, you've probably been prompted before to like, oh, you can create a private scan for iteration. The distinction here is if you're doing a private scan, that is only visible to you and for your project and for like rapid prototyping. But if you've created a private scan of like your desk, or if I create a private scan like in the corner of my kitchen so I can rapidly iterate, that's not an experience that I can easily share with other people unless I invite the entire world into my kitchen, which I don't want to do. So what we're really focusing on doing with the geospatial browser is opening up a way for you to explore the world, find locations where you can get people to gather and see your content, and then share that more broadly. So the private scans, again, are really more for iteration, whereas this list of public locations, which are mostly way spots, are places where you can build persistent experiences that thousands, millions of people can all see and experience. And if you share a link and it's like, hey, I just built this thing in Times Square, go check it out, you can actually very quickly do that. So one thing that very quickly came up after we launched VPS is that we had this workflow where anyone could create a private location for prototyping. But when we first launched, we only had about 10 or 15,000 locations. So if a developer wanted to add a new location to the map that they could share publicly, it took a long time. So we've gotten that process. It used to take a couple of weeks. We've gotten it down to a few minutes. So if you want to add a new location, and this, again, not a requirement, but if you look at our map and you see there's no locations near where you are and you want to add something to the map, you can just follow the nomination process on the web or in the Wayfarer app and quickly add a new location. And within a few minutes, you can start scanning it and getting it activated. So again, just a couple quick notes on this. I just want to get super clear. This is not a requirement for this challenge. It's only if you want to add a new location to the map. This is an area where we've made this process a lot easier. So today, if you want to add a new location to the map or add scans to an existing location, you use the Wayfarer app, which you can download for iOS or Android from our website. There's more information in the documentation for how to do that. But our requirement for getting a new location activated is we just need to collect enough scan data for us to be able to build a good map and create a good mesh for you to author your content. So there's a lot more details that are in our documentation for how to do that. And then once the location is sufficiently scanned, there's just a button you can press, and that button automatically kicks off a mapping job, which will then activate that location on VPS. Our P90 for how long this process takes is 2 to 3 hours. So again, this is much, much faster than it used to be. And again, this is only required if you need to add a new location because there's nowhere near you that you are able to use for creating your public project. So again, more information is available in our documentation for how many scans it requires and when to do all that. So now getting to the exciting part, which is actually building your experience. So once you find the location you want to create your experience, you can browse the mesh of that location, which is created from all the scans that were submitted there. We fuse all that information together and we create this mesh asset, which you can then use as basically your scaffold upon which you craft your experience. So in this particular example, is one of my favorites, is just this animation of these big inflatable cubes that then get blown away by the wind. What the developer is able to do here is go to this location, browse the animation, play it in Unity or another editor, and check to, or you download the mesh as a GLB here, you import that, and then start crafting your experience. You test your experience with the remote desktop development environment, and then you can go out into the wild and actually test the location live. One other thing I want to call out, which is another exciting innovation of the past couple months, is we made a lot of improvements to our Maps module. So you can think of the map view as sort of the connective tissue. If you imagine you're at the stage where you've created a VPS experience and you want to start sharing it with people, you need to find some way to direct your users for how to get to the location on the map. For anyone that has played Pokemon Go or Ingress or Pikmin or any of our other titles, as you're walking around, you sort of see this view of the city or a view of wherever you are. with landmarks, and this sort of guides you to where you need to go to either interact with a Pokestop or interact with a portal, or go find other content in the world. So what this Maps module allows you to do is guide your users to the location where you've created your content. So there's a whole bunch of modules and documentation and sample projects there that you can use to make it much easier once you have gotten someone's attention to say like, hey, I built this experience, here's where it is on the map. And then you can create a view similar to this one that's also fully customizable so that you can guide those users to the locations where the experience has been created. One other piece of just sort of inspiration, motivation I wanted to share. We're really at an exciting stage, and I'm thrilled to be speaking to developers that are part of this stage in like really a pretty important time in terms of like a technological shift happening. For me personally, I've seen a few of these in my lifetime. First, sort of the transition to folks using the internet from reading newspapers and watching TV. And then with the rise of mobile in the late aughts and I guess early teens, to where like most content today is interacted with first on mobile. And now we're at the very beginning stages of seeing a lot of this content come out into the real world. And we sometimes refer to this as the metaverse. We sometimes refer to this as spatial computing, but it's really all about being able to tie experiences into the physical space that folks are operating in. And in order for you to be able to build these sort of alternate realities or augmented reality, we have to understand very high level of detail what the physical world looks like. And being able to do this at scale with our users really requires us to be able to learn more the more people interact with the experiences. So this is like really the aspirational state of what we are trying to build here at Niantic, is a community map where providing this map to our developers allows them to build great AR experiences, which then breeds more player engagement, which then incorporates more data, more scans, more activity within the map, which then grows that map over time. I think the best analogy I can think of for why this is such a powerful effect is for anyone who's ever used like Google Maps or Waze. It's a really valuable product, but it can only exist and like give you accurate ETAs and tell you where the traffic is, because the other people that are sitting in that traffic are using devices that are also logging, okay, I'm traveling along this road, I'm going this fast. There's a very similar sort of flywheel effect that is going to have to be effectively leveraged in order to create an accurate and fresh map of the world that can meet keep up with the pace of demand of developers and players that exist within this environment. So I guess the top thing I want to say is just like, thank you for trusting us and for joining in this journey with us. It's the most motivating and exciting part of my job is talking to early developers who are building and hearing feedback from you about what's working and what isn't working, so we can build a better product for all of you. And that's, it's a fair part of my job. So thank you so much for joining today. And I think I could probably now just show a couple examples of some cool projects that have been built in the past 6 months or so that I think could serve as valuable inspiration. I can talk a little bit about like the underpinnings of how these projects work. So this first one from Atomic Digital is actually, I think this is near the Louvre in Paris. And it is an obelisk in the real world. So it is a real world location that was activated on VPS, and anyone that points their device from this link at the obelisk sees this animation play. And you can see sort of the process they go through. They design the animation, they then use the mesh of that location to position everything properly, and then anyone who goes to that location can see that experience. This next one is kind of silly. This particular experience is just a grill at this park or restaurant. I forget the exact location. And once you've localized, there's actually just an animation of a grill flipping burgers. So this is the Coors Light California Bear example. And very similarly, this is just activated like very quickly. You just have to create this mesh of the location. And then once you guide a user there, they can all see this experience. And then another one of my favorites is an experience that was built for Coca-Cola. which is a promotion that they were running for Halloween last year, where there were a handful of special vending machines, and users would go to the location. And then once you've successfully localized this, there's sort of like creepy music playing that I'm not playing audibly right now, but basically they create this entire overlay that changes the environment. And then they use hand tracking to verify that a user has touched the machine. And then the machine randomly generates a prize. And I think one of the prizes was tickets to Coachella or something, but it created this like really neat viral experience. And this was like one of the most widely viewed VPS experiences we've ever had. So this is like really high production value, like super cool experience that was also tied to a larger world event. So this was really inspiring for me because it actually shows there is a lot of potential commercial application of this. You can also see in this particular view that there's multiple vending machines around, and they've used the Maps module to connect all those different experiences together so players can see other places they can go. I think with that, we can turn it over to questions. So Chanel, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tory. I know you thanked us and the community for helping you build the Niantic Map. I know that we all appreciate your team and all the hard work that you guys are doing to make this possible. It's very exciting and inspiring. And we do have lots of questions already in Slido. So I'll read off a really popular question that several people have upvoted, and I'll give some kind of context as well. So some developers are kind of unsure if they should be building VPS experiences in Unity or in WebAR with Eighth Wall. Someone's interested in building kind of like a very complex nationwide treasure hunt game, and they're wondering, can Eighth Wall handle this, or should this be built in Unity and using Lightship Maps SDK?
Really good question. So I think that might be a good question to dive into a little bit more with our partner engineering team. But I guess the good news is VPS supports both web and Unity, and our Maps module supports both web and Unity. The main place where I would propose building with web is if you want to be able to build very quickly and have a very fast iteration loop. And you also want to be able to grow very quickly in terms of like just sending someone a link. One thing we have learned at Niantic is Unity development is much more involved. The development cycles are much longer. I think, just for example, we've had hundreds and hundreds of Eighth Wall projects launch since we launched VPS for web, but we've only had a handful launch for Unity. We just have generally found that web development is just much faster, has a lower bar for entry. Whereas Unity is where if you have a team that wants to make a very large investment and like build something that's really going to have staying power, but a lot of experiences like can be built for either. It depends a lot on the specific game you're building. And I think another sort of like guiding principle is thinking about like how long do I expect a user to be interacting with the content I've created? If it's something where you think like thousands or tens of thousands of people just want to like see it and like capture some screenshots and share it on social media, I think web is the way to go. But if you want to build a user base that's going to keep interacting with the experience for a very long time and have sessions that are minutes or even hours long, that's where Unity starts to make more sense. But even if you think Unity is the right answer, I think the web is probably the easiest way to do prototyping.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I know there's no right answer. It's really based on each experience. And like Tory said, if you're really interested in diving into this, our partner engineers or someone on the partnerships team can definitely talk to you more about this. Feel free to reach out to us on Slack. And then I just want to clarify, there's a lot of questions in Slido about if the challenge is for Unity or for Eighth Wall. So the challenge is only for Eighth Wall, VPS for web, but Tory mentions Unity a lot because VPS is a cross-platform feature that we use for Lightship ARDK built on Unity as well as Eighth Wall. But just wanted to clarify that one more time.
Thanks, And sorry for the confusion.
No, there's no confusion. I think a lot of developers here do build on both. Looking at some people over here, I know that. So it's a good question to clarify one more time. So someone asked, can the map be customized? They couldn't find the template project. I can drop the template project link or the sample project link in the chat for you. But yeah, that's another question that Tory can answer.
Yes, you can customize the map. I think we're adding some more potential ways to customize it, but I know in the demos I've looked at recently, there's dozens of different ways, and we're actually going to continue to grow the extent to which that can be done. I'll make sure that when Jamika presents, she has some more information on that as well.
Yeah, and I just dropped the link to the Lightship Maps theme collection. So if you just go to athwal.com/projects and you type in maps in the search bar, you'll find a few sample projects, and the theme collection one is actually the one used in the Coca-Cola experience. And that's how they customized it. So thank you for asking that question. Let's see, another question is, someone, if I like don't explain this correctly, please feel free to unmute yourself and explain this. But someone said, I built an experience for a right angle in a wall with a local mesh. Will it work in other 90-degree wall locations, or do they have to be the exact same mesh? Fun question.
Okay, good question. So I think one thing that we want to enable our developers to do is to be able to deploy content at scale, especially with nascent technologies like generative AI. That's another thing we're investing in. So we'll probably be able to share more about that the second half of this year. But it's certainly a lot of work to create an experience that you're probably only iterating in one location. But for example, what the Coca-Cola team did is they built an experience based on a vending machine, but they were able to deploy that experience to a bunch of different vending machines. They didn't have to build a different experience for every single one. There were maybe like some very small tweaks they needed to make. So for example, if you create an experience that works in the corner of a room, that actual asset that you create, you can still deploy to other locations. You just need to make sure that it aligns correctly. And what we do want to improve going forward is the sort of build once, deploy everywhere concept within AR. I think that's going to be extremely valuable. So today you would still have to like select that new location, drop your content in and make sure it's properly aligned. But you shouldn't need to build a totally different experience for every location. You just sort of have to be mindful of the way the world looks at each of those locations. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a fun, interesting question. Awesome. Let's see the next question. We have lots of questions. I'm just trying to. Okay, so Alex said, I've been trying to capture a big building here in his city, but the Wayfair app can't read the geometry due to its size. Is there any workaround for this?
So the question was around trying to build an experience at a very large location. Okay, great. That's a very timely question. I'm actually working on a project right now. We are developing a means to build experiences that are much larger in scale. It's still early. I guess just to back up a step, today, most VPS activated locations are, I'd say roughly 10 meters in diameter is about the size of the area. So 10 meters or roughly 33 feet in diameter is usually about how much space a developer has to work with for the location where you can actually localize. But there are a lot of developers out there that want to build much larger scale experiences. Like, for example, if I wanted to be able to see the Eiffel Tower with AR instead of just like that obelisk that I showed in Paris. So we are working on that. And I think there'll be more ways to do this the second half of this year. For this challenge, I would recommend trying to create things that would fit within the size of like roughly a studio apartment. So like, again, like sort of a 10 by 10 meter area or a 10 meter diameter. Another thing to keep in mind is even if you can only localize within that smaller space, like 10 meter diameter, you can still place content that is more than 10 meters away. You just have to keep in mind the way our localization and tracking systems work is the farther away an object is, the more that error is going to propagate with how far away the content is. But for example, if you were in San Francisco and you localized to, there's a statue of Gandhi out behind our building that is like closer to where the San Francisco Bay is. If you localize to that statue and you wanted to build an experience where like the Goodyear blimp is like up in the sky, floating above the Gandhi statue, obviously that'd be much more than 10 meters away, but you can still place that content relative to where the person localized at the base of the statue. So we've had a lot of developers do that. We actually had a Linkser, who's a developer building a dead mouse application, do something very similar at our launch event last year, where the localization object was an anchor, but the dead mouse pirate ship was way up in the sky and actually like dropped down a chain to the anchor at the base of the building, but you could see like the entire sky filled with content. So there's lots of creative ways to circumvent this. But in terms of actually localizing, that is a feature that we are working on adding just to make that work better. There's a lot of limitations around how phones work that is making this challenging. But I am optimistic that there'll be a pretty substantial improvement in that in the coming months. Another really good question, and happy to hear it because it validates a lot of the work we've been doing.
Yeah, I love to hear these questions. They're really useful. Another question we have around scanning as well. Oops, it just moved. Where did it go? Okay, let me find the question. I think it was uploaded, then moved up. Okay, so someone asked, my scans seem to slip a fair amount, throwing off occlusion meshes. Is there any best practices to tighten this up?
I didn't quite. So is this, I didn't quite understand. Is the question about like scanning as in adding data to the map, or is it about trying to localize?
Yeah, that's a good question. If anyone wants to unmute and clarify if it's about localizing, yeah.
Yeah, so I've noticed like it's kind of adding data. Like, so if I'm scanning and across from me, like a church area or something like that, that's across the street, which is already kind of on the map. But when I go and like just drop in a really quick experience there, it seems like I'll go like to one side of say like this like statue there, and you can tell the occlusion is almost like the occlusion mesh feels like it's off by like 3 or 4 feet given, and it might be given time of day, like a shadow casting thing that's kind of inching it when it was, I don't know how often it's been scanned and how like tight that mesh is to like the real world. I don't know how to like, I guess, improve upon that to make it a little more of a, especially if you're trying to put something with really tight occlusion, or like physics or something like that, where it bounces off of the mesh.
Yeah, so I think what you're running up against is just one of the limitations of the technology today. That's one of our most active areas of work. So we've created a system today where any developer can activate new locations, but obviously as old locations become out of date or the world changes, we also need to make sure developers have a lever that they can pull to get those locations updated. So one of the things I didn't want to get too far into the details during the main presentation, but if you see a location on the map and it seems like it's out of date or it's not working well enough for you, once you've added 5 additional scans, which those just have to be like 30 seconds each. If you add 5 additional scans, you'll have an option to reactivate, which actually will reprocess all of that data using our latest algorithms, which we're constantly improving. And in many cases, that will improve the outcome that you are going to have there. I will caution everyone though, that there are some locations that just aren't going to work very well. So I think for the scope of this project, I would advise developers to browse, and if you see a location that looks like the occlusion mesh is in pretty good shape, that's going to be the most surefire way of having success for this particular challenge. But what you're describing, Steve, I think is like one of the most difficult fundamental challenges we have, which is building a really accurate map of the world at scale with crowdsourced data is just, right, it's a slog. But that is something like it's a passion for us to make this work better. So I'm happy to hear feedback that there's still challenges being presented here. But yeah, we're still learning ourselves, like what types of locations are most suitable for development today, which is why we're trying to have a couple 100,000 that developers can choose from. And hopefully that means there are at least a few close to where you are that you can work with effectively.
Okay, cool.
Thank you for answering that question. Thank you for asking that question, Steve. Awesome. I think it's a question that I think we assume, or a concept that we assume that a lot of people understand already, but someone's asking, can you define localization for in the context of VPS for
Absolutely. When you go to a location and localize, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen before that. I'll often talk about there's sort of three different pillars that we need to make VPS work. The first is we need data. So anytime you go out and scan a location, whether you're using the Wayfair app or you're a player at Ingress or Pokemon Go, you are submitting a series of video frames, and then you upload that scan, which is a whole bunch of data that has location and images in it. So that's the first step, which is the data collection piece that we do, our players do, or our developers do. The middle piece is all data processing. So once that data has been uploaded, processed, and anonymized on our servers, we apply a bunch of secret sauce that builds two different types of assets. The first asset we build is the mesh. So when you go to the geospatial browser and you look at a location, that 3D mesh you see of the world, that's built from scan data, and it is a human readable representation of a location that developers can use to build content. The other asset we build is kind of invisible to humans. The other asset we call a map, but it's not the map in the way that humans relate to a map. It is a map that takes as input one frame from a device and gives as output your localization. So when we say localization, we actually mean the response that the server sends to you when you localize. And what we need to do to make the experience that you built show up correctly in the environment in which you are standing is we need to correctly orient you in that environment much more precisely than you could do with GPS. Because GPS is just going to give you your latitude and your longitude, but VPS will give you your latitude and your longitude, but it will also give you your orientation. So we're actually calculating not only exactly where you're standing, but the actual vector from your eyeball. So through your device, we have to figure out exactly where your device camera is so that we can overlay the experience you created at that location. So very long-winded, there's a lot of complexity here, but the third pillar that makes all of this work is when you actually send the localization request, what we send back is just, this is exactly where you're standing and exactly what you're looking at, so that the experience that you've built is correctly rendered in the frame, either on the web or wherever you built your experience.
Great, thank you for that question, Tory. Another question is it possible that information becomes outdated? Do we need to take new scans of the area often that we want to focus on, for example, after construction is completed?
Yes. Yeah. So if anyone has ever gone to navigated to a location or gone to a restaurant and you realize hey, I got there at 8:30, it was already closed, but online it said it was open until 9. If you multiply that problem by about infinity, that's what it's like to try to build a 3D map of the world that's always up to date. So yes, 100%. A lot of the locations that are currently on the map were built from scans that were taken a month ago, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. So the only way that we can make this work over time is build a system that is flexible enough to continually update itself. The first step of that is giving our developer community levers that they can use themselves to hey, this map's out of date, I need to update it. So we created all the tools so developers can go and add more scans and say hey, I've added new information, please reactivate this location. Another project that we're working on here is finding more ways of giving developers the information they need to know without having to go there and check themselves. Is this location actually going to work for me or not? Right now, if you go to geospatial browser, I think we just tell you whether the location is good or fair. But I'm working with a few of my colleagues to add a lot more rich information. For example, this is the exact date that we last activated, and then maybe show you something like a histogram of the different underlying pieces of scan data that were used to activate that location. And the other thing that we want to do longer term is have a system that can more intelligently figure out when the world has changed so that we can make those updates without being told to. But yeah, that brings us to like really the bleeding edge of this challenge is the more people that we have participating in this ecosystem, the more pieces of information we will have to keep it running.
Thank you. That was a great question and great response. Another question is, if you scan a Wayfarer and then you log into your 8th Wall account, does that mean the data is accessible only from 8th Wall VPS and not from Unity?
So if you submit a scan, so right now today, the only way to submit scans is with a Wayfarer app. All map data that is submitted to Niantic will build a map that is accessible for any web client and any Unity client. Everything is shared. The only exception here is, as I was mentioning earlier, if you're doing like rapid prototyping and you create a private scan, that will only be visible to your API key. But any scans that you submit at Wayspot, or if as long as it shows up on the geospatial browser and you're submitting data there, that will be visible and available for all developers regardless of platform.
Great, thank you for clarifying that, Tory. And then a question again regarding scanning is there an optimal way to take scans, maybe some best practices, including favorable weather or lighting, etc.?
Yes, Chanel, I know we have a set of guidelines for how to scan best, and I'm not sure, do you know where that is, Chanel?
I can find it and I will share it.
Yeah, we will share that, but I think a few pointers that I can just share anecdotally as someone who spent a lot of time scanning and a lot of time localizing. So VPS works best today in locations that are distinct and consistent in appearance. So distinct means it's a location where if you showed a picture to someone that was familiar with the area, it's like, oh, I know where that is. An example of something that is not distinct would be if you are at like Venice Beach in California and you're just at a particular spot on the beach, that location is going to look very similarly. Like you could be at 100 different places on that beach and it kind of looks similar. The other problem is the tide goes in and out and the sand moves to a different place all the time because there's people running around playing volleyball and stuff like that. So a lot of locations that are like really out in nature change quite a lot. So for example, if you build an experience in your yard and then you mow the lawn, that might break the experience. And it'll especially be bad if like you trim a bunch of hedges or something like that. So the distinct and consistent in appearance part is really important. In terms of actual scanning, once you've chosen a location, we're right now working on improving like the scan visualization. So it's more clear to you as you're scanning, like where we've collected the data. But a good general rule is today you want to be within 15 feet-ish, or like 15, 16 feet or 5 meters of the location as you scan it. And one recent thing we've improved in the Wayfarer app is when you finish scanning, you can actually see a preview of the mesh on your device. So you can actually check to make sure like, okay, this looks like I did a good job of capturing the environment. And we're also incorporating on-device scan quality checks. So we'll let you know like, hey, this scan looks good. Otherwise, I think the resource that Chanel is looking up would be a good place to check. But that's another thing that we're trying to do a better job of informing our developer community and then allowing you, like once you've created an experience, to make sure that if you want your users someday to also be able to add data to the experience you've created so you can expand it to new locations, to make that easy as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tory. And I think we are at time with questions, but I have dropped the Wayfarer scanning documentation for 8th Wall in the chat if anyone would like to see that. And I know there are a bunch of questions. So in Slido, Tory and I will try to tackle them asynchronously. So feel free to look at the Slido link later on today or tomorrow for the updated answers that we can, questions we can get to. But thank you so much, Tory, for answering all of our questions. It's been a true pleasure hearing from you, and thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you all again. Like I really meant everything I said around like how valuable you all are. And like, thank you for all the feedback. Like if you're having a terrible time, I want to hear about it. So I'm sure Chanel will make sure that that feedback gets to me and the rest of the team that's working on this. So thank you all so much again.
Awesome.
Don't worry, we'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you. And please stay on if you would like to learn more about the VPS for Web challenge. I'm going to go over some of the programming and criteria now. So as you know, we are launching the VPS for Web Challenge. It starts today, May 2nd, and ends June 5th. I'm really excited about the location-based WebAR experiences that you will all build. Let's go over some challenge programming. So a lot of you guys have asked about how to get started with VPS for Web, where are the tutorials, where are the sample projects. We actually have a hands-on virtual workshop coming up next week. Next Tuesday, we're going to be joined by Jamaica March, a partner engineer on the developer adoption team, and she's going to be leading you on a step-by-step tutorial on how to get started with VPS for Web. So make sure that you don't miss that. If you can't attend, the recording will be available. And then we'll also be having an 8 talk where we're inviting Atomic Digital Design, the agency that created that Luxor Obelisk VPS experience, to talk about how they've created location-based AR experiences with VPS. And then we're going to have a group ideation session in a little bit. As always, the challenges channel on Slack is available. I love to see you guys ask questions and help each other out on there. For technical questions, make sure you still submit your questions in the help and support channel, just so our developer support engineers can flag them. But for challenge-specific questions or for feedback, feel free to use the challenges channel. Pablo, our community manager, will also be sharing tips and tricks for the VPS for Web challenge. And then the last week of the challenge, Evan and Ian, our developer support engineers, will be available for one-on-one support sessions. I will share the Calendly link later on, and you can book short meetings with them so they can help you troubleshoot live. We really want to set you guys up for success, and this is how we're doing it. Going into the prizes, so we have over 20K worth in prizes. We're going to have about, I believe, 14 winners. The VPS Grand Prize winner will receive $5,000 cash prize, a spotlight blog, and a meeting with Niantic staff. We're really invested in how you guys build, and we want to see how you could take this project to the next level. The runner-up prizes will be the best VPS utility prize, the most scalable VPS experience prize, and the VPS fun prize. So for the VPS utility prize, you want to see how you're really using VPS in a meaningful way to create unique location-based experiences. For the most scalable VPS prize, we want to see how you can scale to several way spots and spawn your experience there. And then the VPS fun prize is just kind of a fun, wacky, weird experience. So we really want you to think outside of the box. And then we will have 9 honorable mentions and 1 community favorite, and they will receive $1,000 in cash prize. So we loved how you participated in the Sky Effects Challenge, and we want you to see you do bigger and better things for the VPS for Web Challenge. The judging criteria is kind of similar to the last challenge. The main difference will be that we're really focusing on VPS for Web, because that's a theme, and the innovation will be how can you use other WebAR features, including 8th Wall or other libraries, to really create a robust location-based experience. Does it speak to the Niantic's mission of inspiring the world to explore? Oh, I messed up our own mission, sorry. We want to inspire the world to explore, inspire the world to, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say it correctly right now. That's embarrassing. And then how complete is your project? Do you have an onboarding screen? Do you have a splash screen? Are you thinking about the end-to-end user experience? So that's a judging criteria. And then the submissions page. So we're using Itch again for submissions, make sure you join that page. And then final projects must use public wayspots. For your testing purposes, you can use private scans, but for final projects, make sure you are using public wayspots. I understand that sometimes you may not have a wayspot near you, but with remote content authoring, you can publish and anchor content to other wayspots in the world. I will be sharing a list of wayspots where Niantic employees or offices are located. If you really do not have access to a public waystspot and the nomination process is going to take a very long time, we want to help you. So you can use remote content authoring, and we can help you test and record. I'll be sharing that later on. You have to submit a 60-second demo video with the 8th Wall public playable link. Maximum 3 submissions allowed. VPS is very labor intensive, and we want to make sure you are creating quality experiences. And then again, all submissions are due June 5th at 11:59 p.m. I'm going to move quickly. Communication, again, use the challenges channel in the 8th Wall developer Slack. And then I'm going to move into the ideation session now. We have about 9 minutes, and I want to make sure that we start thinking of great ideas. So if you don't have any really pertinent questions, I would love for anyone who wants to stay on to brainstorm ideas. And if you have other questions, please ask them in the challenges channel in Slack. Let me see. Thank you, Tori. Inspire people to explore the world together. Yeah, English is hard today. Okay, so let's see. If everyone is willing to stay on and do the ideation session, I'm going to drop this Google Jamboard link in the chat, and I would love for everyone to join the Google Jamboard. If you haven't used Google Jamboard before, it's an interactive virtual whiteboard, and we're going to have fun and hack together. Thanks, Steve. No worries. See you later. If you'd like to stay on, please stay on. If you want to drop, no worries. I'm going to change my screen for this one. Okay, so I see 11 people in the Jamboard. Pablo, I might lean on you to help me share that link with people, or just let me know if people can't get in. I'm going to try to look at the chat at the same time. Cool. So I want you guys to use the test area. So in Google Jamboard on the left-hand panel, there's a pen, there's a sticky note, there's a text box. Grab a sticky note and just kind of write, hi, hello, your name. I want to make sure that everyone's comfortable using Google Jamboard. I'm going to start Chanel. That's my name if you did not know. You can rotate these as well. You can make them larger. You can move the test area. Okay, great. Hi, Jorik. Thank you for joining. Pablo, Joao, Sammy, Marianne. Yay. See a lot of familiar names. Thanks for hanging out. We miss Hall while doing Jamboard. I miss Hall too. We got to get Hall out. Hi, Brian. Hi, Zipcar. Awesome. You guys know how to use Jamboard, Amato. Cool. Hi, Diego. Cool, cool. Seems like everyone knows how to use Jamboard. If we can go to the next slide, you're just going to click the next frame up here on the above. And we're going to go to slide 2. I want you to write your ideas on a sticky note. I'm going to give everyone a minute, 60 seconds to write down all of your VPS ideas. Do you want to build a scavenger hunt? Do you want to do like an NFT puzzle? Do you want to do kind of like an, I don't know, in IRL or virtual AR escape room? Write down all of your crazy ideas. Do you want to have like a raid party or like a role play game? A food tour, oh, that's fun. Coffee shop locations, keep them coming. Giving you guys 60 seconds to do this. Resource gathering treasure hunt. Ooh, that sounds like a lot of fun. You animate and add music to famous graffiti murals. Ooh, that would be a really cool walking tour. Tour of a college campus. That's a really functional way to use VPS. I love it. Coffee shop locations. Nice. Pride Month tour in New York City. Yes, I think VPS would be really great for live events, to help people navigate through them. I think I was at South by Southwest and someone tried like mapping all the parties on Google Maps and it wasn't the most intuitive. So that would be really fun. History of the city of Medellin. Nice. I know that's Lobardo. Animated overlays to statues. Ooh, that'll be interesting, especially if you're like a city like in Rome or something with lots of statues. Cool. I'm going to give you guys 30 more seconds to add more sticky notes. You can add more than one sticky note. Do as many as you can. Most authentic fast food joints. Interesting. Portal in hell with a VPS. Oh my gosh, I'm scared. Coffee tutorial. Cool. AR horse ranch. Interesting. Very, very cool. Okay. So 10 seconds to wrap up, and then we're going to move on to the next step. The next step is going to be grouping these into themes. I want you guys to move the sticky notes into themes that have a similar topic. For example, maybe the food tour and the winery brewery tour would be together, right? They're essentially kind of very similar experiences. Festival tours might be the same as a food tour as well. So let's spend 30 seconds to group these into locations. You guys can help me. Let's do food tour, brewery tour. Festival tour might go with Pride Month tour. Tour of a campus, coffee, tutorial might be food tour again, real life flow chart. Interesting. Tell me more later. Tour around graffiti. I feel like graffiti would match the statues. And feel free to unmute yourself and talk. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Seem a little crazy. Choose your own adventure in the city. Oh, that's super fun.
You're not crazy, and I have been wanting to do this forever because my husband's an artist and has a mural, and I've been wanting to animate it forever. So I love these other ideas about like making it into, you know, doing all of his murals or doing a whole bunch of murals that are downtown or something like that.
Yeah, you know, Marianne, I'll send this link to you, but there is an experience of developer bringing to life museum like oil paintings. They use like an image target where you scan the painting and then the painting starts talking, and it'll be really cool if you did that similarly with VPS.
And my son had an idea of doing a portal to another dimension. So yeah, that's a good idea too.
Is that yours, the portal in hell?
Somebody else posted that, but I love it.
Cool. Okay, I see lots of themes. I see food tour, Pride Month. Let's see. Since there's a lot of like food brewery tours, like can you guys raise your hand or just unmute and let me know if that was you? If you put food tour, coffee shop, wine brewery, who did that?
I did the Pride Month, and again, I'm here in the West Village, and I'm 2 blocks from like the epicenter of the parade. So that's an interesting idea. At first, I was like, oh, I could just do something at Stonewall, but then thinking your Southwest experience, like I could actually make a map for people that are in the neighborhood and they need to know like where to eat or like where's the parade start and where's the parade end, and like just having that kind of wayfinding information would be helpful.
Yeah, that is super helpful. To anyone who put wine brewery tour, curious. Where are they located? Like in Napa or something? Okay, they're being shot.
Oh, hey, it's Jason here. No, I'm just trying to find the mute button. Yeah, I spent a fair chunk of the weekend in looking around wineries and that kind of thing, and you know, interesting just to get the history behind how it all came about, that kind of thing. It's always something that they always try and tell you about. If they're busy though, they don't often get to talk to you for long. So
yeah, that's really cool because you're in Portland, right? So that's like the Russian River Valley or whatever.
Yeah, there's plenty around. There's no shortage, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like those areas are huge, but they could be self-guided tours using 8th Wall and VPS. That's a great idea. Really cool. Awesome. I want to move into maybe a different theme now. Let's see. I'm just like super curious. Who put AR Horse Ranch? I need to know more. I don't know what it means. I need to know more. Who put AR Horse Ranch? I want to share. I'm going to think like really crazy thoughts if you don't tell me more. Okay, that's fine if you don't want to share about the AR Horse Ranch. We do have 1 minute left, so I would love for everyone to kind of take this conversation into the Challenges Slack channel. I'm going to take a screenshot of this and share this. If you guys really see a lot of themes similar to that you want to focus on, it might be a good idea to start team forming. I know that some of you guys prefer to work individually, or if you work with an agency, you already have a team, but I see lots of themes here where folks can kind of form teams. You can work on more than one project as well. Raves at the Pier by 8th Wall. That sounds like a lot of fun. But it's been a blast brainstorming with you. I hope that you have some kind of spark has lit up and that you guys can come to the 8th Wall VPS workshop next week with hosted by Jamaica with your crazy ideas and get ready to actually go into the technical side of things. By the end of next week's workshop, you should have a working build with 8th Wall. So I hope that you don't miss that session. It's going to be very valuable and help you get quickly started for this challenge. I'm going to stay on the line for a few more seconds just to say bye and see if anyone has any questions. But thank you so much for staying around and coming up with really fun ideas.